So I pulled her back, and when I looked, I thought I saw a dead body, but I wasn't too sure because, it was missing some limbs.
Life sentence for the murder of Colleen Ritzer, the highest level our law allows.
I took away someone's mother, their grandma, sister, friend.
I truly regret every single thing that happened that day.
Evidence of him taking her body and wheeling it to the woods just a few yards away from the school she so loved.
Your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
I don't know what to say.
Welcome back to our YouTube channel. After murdering day 3 after murdering somebody.
Whoa! Don't put that on camera.
It is horrifying to think that a minor might be given a life sentence in jail, and it raises many challenging issues regarding the justice system. What transpires when a young person is given a life sentence with no chance of parole? What are their reactions to the news? First up is Sierra Houseth and Aaron Guerrero. For the deaths of the girl's father, Sierra Houseth 16 and Aaron Guerrero 18, a young girl and her boyfriend were each handed a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole. Both admitted to the 45-year-old Daniel Houseth's murder.
Welcome back to our YouTube channel. After murdering day 3 after murdering somebody.
Whoa!
Daniel was found in the garage of his residence in northwest Los Angeles. The teenagers were arrested in Salt Lake City 4 days later on April the 14th. District Judge Tiara Jones ruled Sierra and Guerrero guilty, and each was given the harshest punishment possible: life in prison without the possibility of parole in 22 years. The offender must also pay $5,000 in reparation, according to the court's ruling. To every charge leveled against them, the two defendants entered guilty pleas. This included 4 counts of fraudulent use of credit or debit cards, murder with a deadly weapon, attempted robbery with a deadly weapon, and conspiracy to commit robbery. My only query is, why does Sierra appear bored while Aaron seems to be inconsolable, perhaps even a touch drained? She may be a bit more complicated than first appears, but one thing is certain: she is not laughing right now.
You're in a tough spot because your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
She's not my granddaughter.
Next up, Philip Chisholm.
Philip Chisholm, he was a Massachusetts teenager who was accused of raping and murdering his high school algebra teacher and then robbing her.
Philip Chisholm, a 9th grader at the time, carried out an unimaginable act on October the 22nd, 2013. Chisholm was requested to remain after school on that particular day in 2013 by the supposedly enthusiastic Colleen Ritzer, who was well renowned for going above and beyond to help her children. Today, however, she was unaware that the hourglass, which stood for her life, was about to empty. Chisholm pursued Ritzer into a bathroom and killed, robbed, injured, and abused her there. He then dragged her dead body behind the school after stuffing it into a trash can. Then Chisholm went into town and bought a movie ticket using Ritzer's credit card. The following morning, when the police discovered Philip, they were shocked to see that he still had Colleen's blood on his hands. The indictment that was issued named Philip Chisholm as a defendant for the co-lead Ritzer's murder, aggravated rape, and armed robbery. He was tried as an adult, and in February 2016, a sentence was handed down that required him to serve at least 40 years in prison. The heartfelt tribute seems to ignore the fact that the murderer was a teenage boy who had little to no regret for his heinous act.
Court will impose the mandatory life sentence for the murder of Colleen Ritzer and set a parole eligibility date of 25 years, the highest level our law allows.
10-year-old, can you imagine? Our statutes the way they're standing right now, 10-year-old facing life in prison.
I was talking with Antonio about getting money. He brings up that he could kill his grandma.
Did you think he was serious?
No.
Did you think he was joking?
Yes.
Next up, Antonio, Babu, and Nathan Pape. Within the state of Wisconsin, a brutal murder of an elderly woman was committed by Antonio Babu and Nathan Pape, who were both found guilty. According to court filings, Antonio and Nathan planned to harm and rob Antonio's great-grandmother. In the end, they spent the portion of the stolen funds on pizza and marijuana. The events that followed, in which the elderly woman was repeatedly beaten and then attacked with a hatchet, were straight out of a horror film. Babu, however, after striking a settlement with the prosecution, modified his plea from not guilty of mental sickness or defect to no contest. However, things didn't go as planned because the judge handed out the harshest punishment. Babu received a life sentence after being proven guilty. In addition, the court ruled that 14-year-old Nathan Pape would also be sentenced to life in prison. What do you think? Did the judge get it right this time? These kids committed horrific crimes against an old grandmother who wasn't paying attention. Thus, their crime unquestionably earned a harsh term. However, would rehabilitation have been a more fitting punishment?
Horrendous. I mean, I don't know how many times that I get up in a given day and just still can't believe it happened. I mean, it's just so horrendous. It's crazy.
You know, less than 24 hours after they did this, they're out buying pizza. 10-year-old facing life in prison.
I don't understand that. They aren't adults, they're children.
Next up is Shaundell Jackson. The University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee's Nathan Potter, a 21-year-old bright film student, had most likely made preparations for his life's course following graduation, but fate had some other plans. Nevertheless, Shaundell Jackson, a 19-year-old, and his accomplice's plan did not pan out. On that fateful day, 20-year-old Derek Thomas stopped Potter as he was making his way to his apartment, grabbed him, and declared him a fine target for robbery. Thomas was supposed to be the watchman while Jackson robbed Potter, but the robbery went wrong. Jackson shot Potter in the chest, murdered him, and then ran away because Potter didn't have any money. Jackson displayed a carefree attitude throughout the trial, and as he was led from the courtroom, his victim's family could see him grinning and mouthing obscenities. When County Circuit Judge Rebecca Dallett gave Jackson a life sentence without the possibility of parole for one count of felony murder, Jackson's demeanor turned violent. He cursed the judge, so court officers had to wrestle him to the ground, pepper spray him, and restrain him. Next up, Conrad Schaefer. Nearly 3 years after the youngest triggerman and his friends terrorized Osceola County with random shootings that claimed the lives of 2 innocent bystanders, a court sentenced him to consecutive life terms in prison. Conrad Schaefer, now 18 years old, expressed his sympathies to the victims' families.
I'm just like to apologize to the families that I've hurt. I know that y'all never forgive me, and I don't expect you to. I know if I was in your position, I'd feel the same way.
Before the shootings began, Schaefer was able to convince his father to buy a .45 caliber high-point carbine and 100 rounds of ammunition. The neighborhood horror story apparently started when he waited until his father went back to bed before sneaking the gun out the home. Schaefer also admitted guilt to 2 counts of first-degree murder within the courtroom, in connection with the escalation of violence that left neighbors on edge for more than 2 weeks as gunfire entered their residences and vehicles over 22 times. The judge declared after the hearing that Schaefer would be receiving the death penalty if he were 3 years older than he is right now, even though this is unlikely to affect how the families feel. However, given his age when the act was committed and his regret, there may still be hope for this young man. Next up, Marty Fuller. Kaylee Jugger, who was 15 at the time, and her mother Stephanie Jugger had been organising a camping trip for the whole family, but regrettably, the trip was never executed. Kaylee, who'd broken up with her boyfriend Marty Fuller weeks earlier, was in her room listening to music when the tragedy happened. Fuller accuses Kaylee of being the causes of his problems after he got kicked out of school and off the football team. On May the 9th, 2019, he entered Kaylee's room covertly carrying a weapon. Fuller was familiar with the house because he visited it. Fuller, a 15-year-old, entered Kaylee's room and then shot her 5 times. Fuller turned on the mother, shot her twice, and escaped while she walked outside to investigate after hearing gunshots. Thankfully, she managed to survive. Fuller was arrested soon after and accused of burglary, murder, and attempted murder. He maintained his innocence throughout the trial, despite the fact that officials discovered the gun he handed to a relative to get rid of matched the one used in the crime, despite the fact that Kaylee's mother spotted him and spoke up. She broke down later as she talked about losing her daughter.
She was always by my side, and she was my biggest cheerleader. Now I'm lost. I just feel so lost without her. We don't get to see her graduate high school this year. We don't get to see her go to college. We don't get to see her get married or adopt children like she wanted to.
When Fuller was given the chance to speak in court, he insisted that he was innocent and accused the media of casting him in a negative light. Here's a letter written by him that was read by his attorney.
So I am sorry. Despite the hatred that is against me, I still am sorry. But I have to continue to stand innocent because I am.
As the judge read down Fuller's sentence, life in jail without the possibility of parole, he displayed no signs of remorse.
I don't have any ability to trust that you will never commit these acts.
You are a very dangerous and a damaged human being.
Matthew Borges. In the case of Matthew Borges, 18, who was accused of beheading Lee Manuel Valoria Polino in December 2016, the judge has rendered a verdict. He is accused of killing Lee, a classmate at Lawrence High School, while they were both enrolled there. The police have been notified by Borges that he and Paulino shared a joint in November 2016, which was the last time he was seen alive. Lee's death was discovered 2 weeks later by a dog walker on the Merrimack River banks, and the circumstances were dreadful.
As I approached, I got closer, saw her really sniffing at a particular area. So I pulled her back, and when I looked, I kind of second-guessed myself. You know, I thought I saw a dead body, but I wasn't too sure. Because, you know, it was missing some limbs.
At first, Borges wasn't thought to be a suspect, but all of a sudden, that's where things were going. There was a ton of evidence supporting Borges' guilt, the prosecutor claimed in his final remarks. Investigators claim that Borges repeatedly attacked the 16-year-old victim before chopping off his head to prevent identification of the body.
That the defendant Matthew Borges is guilty on the charge of first-degree murder on the theories of deliberate premeditation and extreme atrocity and cruelty.
We observed that Borges displayed no emotion or other indicators of feeling as he was given his sentence. His expression appeared to be empty. He was given a life sentence in prison, with the chance of parole only available after 30 years. Well, that was horrific on so many levels. They are so young, and it's unbelievable to hear a 15-year-old getting a life sentence. What do you think about the punishment? Is it a little too harsh, or do they deserve it?